Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30th anniversary succession of the Conch Republic reenactment as it was on that fateful day of April 23rd, 1982. We have a cast of characters here on stage this evening. Virginia Panico, who flew up to Miami. Of course, our founder and first Prime Minister, Dennis Wardlow. Standing in for Joe Balbontin, Tony Fat Yanez. Commissioner Tony Fat Yanez. Standing in for himself, Edwin O. Swift III. And also as himself, the Secretary of the Air Force, David Paul Horan. I'm Sir Peter Anderson, Secretary General of the Conch Republic, and I'm just going to set the stage a little bit for what happened before we got here. About 3 weeks before this date, in April of 1982, the United States Border Patrol set up a border right where Cardsound Road and US 1 come together. They were stopping all the cars coming out of the Keys. They claimed to be searching for illegal aliens, but residents and visitors wondered what aliens could be hiding in their glove boxes, under their front seats, and in their pockets. The result was an 18-mile traffic jam, and the city fathers rallied around Dennis as our mayor and said, "What shall we do?" Well, the thought was to engage David Paul Horan, who was at that time the lawyer for the Chamber of Commerce. He'd also just argued Mel Fisher's treasure case successfully to the Supreme Court of the United States. Thank you, David. And file an injunction in federal court in Miami to get the government enjoined from treating us like a foreign country.
Tell them who was the head of the task force, Peter.
Oh, the task force, whose brilliant idea this new border was no less a personage than George Herbert Walker Bush. Poppy Bush. By the way, you know, if an apple doesn't fall far from a tree, how far can it fall from a bush? But never mind. George H.W. Bush was the head of a task force that Reagan had set up to stop drugs coming into the United States. Of course, once they put up the border, all the drug smugglers said, "I ain't driving up there." Anyway, Judge Clyde Atkins essentially refused to grant the injunction, and when Dennis and Virginia and David and Ed Swift walked down the steps of the federal courthouse, a forest of microphones and cameras and the assembled world press, because this had become a huge story. You could get into the Keys, but you couldn't get back out. And the press started clamoring, "Mr. Mayor, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?" The short version is he turned to him and said, "I'm going to go home and secede from the United States." So here we are, the next day, at high noon, but we made it 5:30 for your convenience. So pretend it's high noon.
Hey, we're on CPO time. Conch People's Orthodox. 30 minutes behind the rest of the world.
So, 30 years ago today, almost exactly right here,
Right over there.
it was like right over there, Dennis Wardlow stepped up to the plate. But first, before Dennis made his remarks, Edwin O. Swift III had a couple things to say.
All right, let's everybody get another drink and we'll start.
Prophetic.
I think I said that. She was making the drinks. And anyway, Dave pleaded brilliantly in court. Dennis testified brilliantly. I did nothing except said, "Mayor, this is probably your political career." If you want to see how it really happened inside here, we have some of the original footage from that day, which is kind of interesting. I was younger and quite attractive. Anyway, these are my words in 1982 as president of the Chamber of Commerce, well oiled by my fellow Virginia Hotel Motel Association president. And these are we do have all this on tape, so it's nice to see you beautiful people here today. And I have to tell you the truth, it kind of looked the same, except there were some hippie bicycles, and I think some people were smoking something. Anyway, the mayor of Key West will be out here in just a minute, but first I want to say that at no time, no, have we met any disrespect to the American flag. This lady right over here, see it says, shoot this old gray head, but don't tear down my flag, was a county commissioner. She had 4 drunk friends from the VFW. She was walking back and forth. Her name was Wilhelmina Harvey. She's passed now. And Wilhelmina was going, don't you touch that flag! And we were going, oh my God. So, at no time have we meant any disrespect to the American flag. The American flag is flying high and beautifully right over there in Mallory Square. And we salute it. We do. We do salute it. And up there as well, right on top, look at that. Fluid, flowing, salute it. We don't mean any disrespect to that flag, however we wish. And by this ceremony, we hope to call attention to the fact that we feel that the federal government of the United States of America has hurt the citizens of Monroe County, stepped on us like a cockroach. Yesterday, we went before Judge Atkins in federal court in Miami, led by David Paul Horan. And David Paul Horan,
He was younger then, too.
he was younger than too. And he says, basically, Your Honor, I can dive down to 132 feet of water, free diving, and I know, because of that and other things, that the federal court in Miami and the Border Patrol is out of line. It hasn't followed its own rules and regulations for setting up a checkpoint and did not adequately consider the safety of the people of Monroe County in setting up a checkpoint at Florida City. He did not give us the restraining order that we requested. No, Judge Atkins did not give us a restraining order against the task force. He said, in essence, it was one part of the federal government going against another part of the federal government. However, he said that we could be assured that we would not have any more than 2 weeks of that checkpoint. And therefore, it would only be sporadic checks from here on out, and that the free flow of traffic would not be hindered, and that no more cars would be searched illegally. The judge also said to Mr. Horan, notify him if this outrage of backing up cars and blockading our roads and illegal searches ever occurs again. You would, and Dave pointed out also that we caught 2 Canadians and got one guy with pot in his glove compartment, which was the stupidest man in the whole world since he'd been in line for 8 hours to get through. He hadn't smoked at all. You would have been very proud of the attorney for the Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Motel Association, Dave Horan, who did it pro bono, and he did a superb job. And you would have been proud of your mayor, who stood up there on the stand and told it like it was. Our mayor and soon-to-be Prime Minister of the Conch Republic, Mr. Dennis Wardlow.
It's great to see all these smiling faces, and after 30 years, David Paul, Virginia, is still here.
We're all still here.
And Mr. Swift, thank you. It was quite a week. The first time we heard about it was like a Sunday afternoon. My dad was a ham radio operator, and he called me, and I was the mayor at the time, and he said, he asked me, he says, what's going on in Florida City? And the 18-mile stretch is about 23-mile traffic jam, and we're getting all kind of phone calls, and I'm hearing it on the radio. I said, well, I don't know, but I'll find out. So I'm going to make a long story short here. So that Monday I went down to the office, and my secretary had all kind of telephone calls and what's the problem, and I'm responsible, and let's get something done, and you know, all the typical negative phone calls that we get at the City Hall. By Tuesday morning, I went and I saw my good friend at AT&T, Joe Velez, who became my Minister of Spirits, and now you know why. He and I went over and we saw John Magliola, who was at the radio station, and I asked him, I said, have you heard anything on the radio from any of the news media? And he says, well, I'm getting a lot of calls, but I don't know what it's about. So with that, we called the sheriff and the chief and the representative, and it was not my dear, dear friend who will be your next senator, Mr. Ron Saunders over here. But we called, and naturally they didn't know what was going on, so then Congressman Dante Fasell, got a call into him, and I asked him, and he called me back, and he said, Mr. Mayor, I'll tell you what, he says, I don't know what's going on, but the Border Patrol has put up a checkpoint, and they're looking for illegal aliens mainly. I said, okay. So I gave a call to Mr. Dave Paul Horan, who's federal, knew he was a good federal attorney, and I said, Dave, can you get us an injunction against the Border Patrol, because right now I have Miss Virginia Penico, who is head of the Motel Hotel Association, breathing down our throats because of all the cancellations they're getting around here, and everyone's very upset. So Dave says, well, I'll check into it, I'll call you right back. So a couple of hours later, Dave calls back, he says, we have an appointment at 9 a.m. in Miami at the federal courthouse on Thursday. I said, great. So Thursday morning, Ed Swift, Paul Horan, who's the pilot, and Virginia and myself, we get in the plane and we fly to Miami. And we go to the courthouse, and Dave, I'm going to briefly turn this over to you because you had all the legalese. Briefly tell us what you had to go through to at least get a hearing and some of the maneuvering that he had to do just to get us in there. Remember now, this is Tuesday when I called Dave, and here it is Thursday, and we have a hearing at the federal courthouse in Miami. And the only one that could ever pull that off was Dave Horan.
That was pure luck. It really was. What happened was we filed the injunction, and we got a hearing, and then the Attorney General of the United States, William French Smith, flew in on one of the USA airplanes, and when we landed at Miami International, I realized we were in trouble because here's the big-ass airplane, and we're parking under its wing. So at that point, we go over to the federal courthouse, and the judge has now decided that the judge that was originally assigned has now been transferred to the chief judge of the Southern District Federal Court. And he gets in, and when we start the hearing, before it starts, he says, I think we have something to be said by the U.S. Attorney. And I go, what's going on here? The U.S. Attorney gets up and goes, well, we may have made a few mistakes and everything, but here's what we're going to do. From now on, we're not going to stop all the cars, we're just going to stop a few of them. And so we're not going to have a big roadblock anymore. And we're not going to search for things that won't accommodate a body. Up until then, it was like, oh, what was that in that glove compartment? Anyway, so that's what happened. And then when the judge says, what do you think about that? And I went, I want the injunction. He goes, well, if they offend what they just said, call me, give me an affidavit, and I'll enter the injunction. So as we start out, I think it was either Ed or you, turned around to me and said, what was that? And I said, it's kind of like a kiss from your sister. It doesn't mean a whole lot. But anyway, that's what happened. And then we started the Conch Rebellion.